Welcome to the Sid City Social Club for Tuesday, September 29th, our last meeting in September, if you can believe it.
Happy Tuesday! And yeah, it's the end of September. My goodness, how fast these months have flown by. So Amy G is in the house, we hope. How are you personally?
Oh, I'm doing good. You know, just like, I don't know if it's what it's like where you are, but it's just been very gray the last couple weeks because of the clouds from all the fires.
Yeah.
My plants are doing so well.
It's been absolutely beautiful weather here. But we're the complete, opposite of California and, well, obviously Northeast.
Well, I'm in Maryland, so.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
High clouds.
Yeah. They were a bit cloudy today. And how are you and yourself? Are you happy?
It's okay. It's just
Is it dragging on? Is it you beginning to feel like it's like a weight now?
Yeah, I quarantine alone. So my parents live locally and stuff, but so basically during the week I'm solo, like Monday to Friday, and I can get very stir crazy and bored and anyway, so it's also I'm going into like a really busy season at work because of open enrollment. So
remind us again what work is.
Health insurance.
Thank you. I remember we had an in-depth conversation about it, and you helped us all with the questions of what to do, basically.
Yes.
Get it.
Watch the space.
We'll find out more, I guess, in about a month and a half, whether or not how our health insurance will work for a future. See what happens after November the 3rd or whatever the date of the election.
I know. Don't expect, if it goes one way, goodbye health insurance, goodbye Obamacare.
I'm duking it out in the ring right now on TV. I've got it on mute right here in case something visual happens. Nothing will. I can't listen.
You never know.
I just don't want to listen to people throw insults at each other for an hour and a half. I mean, that's really what's going to happen. And it's just going to be just constant bickering. Did you say you work from home?
Yes.
So you really don't get to see no one?
No, I see like my neighbors when I'm taking my dogs out, but yeah. In the beginning, I was like, I'm kind of like a introvert, and so I was like, this is great. And now, month 6.
Now, it's got become really dull.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
I've watched everything.
Have you learned something? What have you made the inroads on that level?
Actually, like I had this. My mother was going through her parents' paperwork when they passed away. She had all this paperwork she inherited, and she started going through it finally. It's been like 5 years, and she was finding paperwork from my grandfather's parents and grandparents, so my great-great-grandparents, and we found like these personal essays that he'd written, and just like a diary basically. He'd written them, and just stuff like silly stuff about like smoking is the greatest thing ever, and one day scientists will prove it, which has not aged well. There's also an essay he wrote about Hitler in the 1930s, like 1934, and he's like, this is a bad idea, Germany. I actually posted it in the Discord, and I was like, this is amazing.
Oh my goodness.
Held up so well. Like, he could literally be talking about like the current president today, and he's from 1934 Germany. So
wow. Well, I've learned something. I mean, I've really found out stuff over this last however many months it's been now, and the kind of combination of it, although it's broader than just the our lovely queer community. I'm going to call you that, guys, that whatever, because it's not easy umbrellaizing you all, but I've just learned a little bit about us, about humans, about. I just never had to think about it, and I wonder if anything like that it's quite profound for me, and I wonder if anything like that has happened to you the last 6 months, sitting on your lonesome, staring at the wall, watching your plants grow,
or not grow. Yeah, I have learned a lot of stuff about the people in this community from what they've talked about, like here, and just, I mean, I knew, I had like LGB friends, but not as many like in my immediate circle that were trans, and so I've been learning. I mean, I knew of the, a couple people, but just in the day-to-day sense of like remembering their pronouns correctly and stuff like that. It's like it became more like a day-to-day thing for me, whereas before it previously wasn't. And it's to just have that like consistent reminder that I didn't have in my day-to-day life prior to.
I love that. I love that. Particularly what you just said about the pronouns, because I honestly thought a few months ago, why the hell should I change the way I speak? I mean, hey, I've got here after 50 years, I've learned the language pretty well, and I'm not about to change everything I know. And I was just so wrong. I was just so wrong. And I wouldn't do it to a person I met from another country. You know, I wouldn't go, I'm not going to call you that because I just don't like that name. Or it's difficult for me to say, or it's hard for me to put into grammar.
Siddig. Yeah,
you know, exactly. So it's not hard to shift. And it's one of the funny things is that, you know, one of my mantras in life is always be prepared to change your mind. And I kind of think that about almost everything. I can't think of many things that I could actually say, I will not change my mind about this, that have become dogma for me. And yet I forgot it. Before I actually I got so lackadaisical, so lazy, that I forgot that freedom I had given myself. And I'm sort of really happy to have found it again. And I couldn't have found it if it wasn't for this community. So I found that to be one of the most marvelous revelations over the last few months. And I think, I'm hoping that a lot of people in the club also get that sense. But the humanity, my goodness. Anyway, I digress. It's not really digression. It's actually right in the middle of what we're talking about always. What are your mantras?
Oh gosh.
Do you have any single guiding one that you think is important to you?
I don't know. I try to give everyone, well, try to give everyone the benefit of the doubt. I think I just, in life, when I meet new people, I want them to, I want to, not to prove themselves to me, but I want to like go in like a neutral stance and be like, I'm going to accept this person like at a neutral platform, and then have them like surprise me basically. So I guess that's kind of, I mean, I'm involved in hiring at work, and there's a lot of times where people are like, I don't know about that person. I'm like, well, let's see. And so far so good. How
do they make those assertions? Do they go, because they say, I don't know about that person after the interview, or are they saying it before?
Sometimes after. I try to just, especially with hiring, where I'm just like, okay, this person, here's the recommendations, here's what they say they can do, let's test it out, give them the trial period, and if it's a fit, it's fit. And every single person I've interviewed has been hired full-time, and every interview I haven't been in has not worked out.
Oh my goodness, that's great. Well, it's so easy to get the worst out of somebody, isn't it? I mean, but it's really a challenge to get the best. And that's one of the things that we're all supposed to try and do for even the most wicked people. that's our kind of job. So it's one of those things that I find the conversation you have with people and the way you posit yourself, the way your stance can be read. So if you're entirely neutral, which you say you are, that's fine.
Try to be.
But if you can be positive, even if you don't know that person, then you're really giving them a challenge to go, whoa, she's up the game here. We can't just be neutral and standoffy against each other. Because I think everybody's really competitive. And I think that's what, ego competition. I'm kind of cooler than you, the better than you. I own a bigger car, or I have a bigger brain, or whatever it is. But I'm really interested in all these dynamics that are going on. And I don't think I would have unlocked the path to them. I won't say unlock them. I'm still a long way away from unlocking anything. But the paths are opening up, and that really excites me.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how many other mantras I have. I think I have kind of like I have a tattoo of one, but I'm not going to show you because it involves taking off my shirt.
Yeah, fine. You're not going to
I was like, the chat immediately. No, no, it's the last line of the Count of Monte Cristo. It's all of human wisdom is contained within the two words wait and hope. So that's kind of a good thing. Or just like, kind of like involved, like wait and hope for the best, kind of in certain situations where I'm just like, let's see this person prove themselves, or let's see how this person interacts with me or gets along, or let's wait to see what their behavior based, will be.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
go from there.
That's fantastic. That's really cool. I'm looking forward to this, Christy. Are you here?
You do mean me.
Hi.
You do mean me. Okay, hi.
Yeah. You are going to give us you're going to talk to us about one of the most important things in the democratic world.
Yeah, I am both excited and a little nervous about this. I started working on some stories and we started getting some questions into viewers, and I went, are you kidding me? The question, like one that always will stand out to me is, how can you're letting voters vote twice? They're voting in the primary and then they're voting in the general election. They can't vote twice. They're not allowed to vote twice in America. And I'm going, you do realize those are two separate elections, right? I'm sitting there kind of like, and I realized that I always knew Americans had trouble understanding government and elections, but I realized that we really needed to sit down and explain this to people. It may not be the big J journalism, the Watergate, investigative stuff, but I feel like as a community, working for a local outlet, it's important to really help people understand how their community works.
And you're in Orlando, right?
Yeah. So in Orlando, in Florida, it's doubly important. So I wrote a story, and the story was so important and well received by my bosses that they said, guess what, Christy, you're going to do an entire section. So I gave Mel a bunch of links. In 2016, I started, the first one that's going to be on your list, Mel, is this is the 2020 Florida voting guide.
Right.
And if you scroll down, most of these Florida voting FAQs I wrote.
Wow.
For mynews13.com. The same ones are used in Tampa, and this is the model for stations throughout the Spectrum News networks. So if you have Spectrum Cable in the United States and you have that cable station has Spectrum News, you may have something like this for your state. I also followed it up in 2017 with a guide to understanding Florida government, which is another link. So we are expanding on this again in 2020. We have a new app, so we're actually building a version for a mobile app. So I have a bunch of links, and I can pull things up, and I figured you're just going to ask me questions and I'll see what I can answer for you.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
What I do.
That's really great. And can you, I think obviously voting, number one, is important. How do we get more people to vote?
The thing
because that seems to be the push right now, doesn't it?
The answer is something that, unfortunately, there's no quick answer.
Yeah.
The basic answer is to talk to each other, which is something in the last 4 years especially we have not been doing, but I would say it goes back the last 10, 15 years, maybe even further. We've increasingly isolated ourselves in these communities, these echo chambers.
Yeah.
And until we start breaking down those barriers, but it requires everybody to be part of it. People always say, if you don't vote, you can't, you don't have a right to complain. And that is true, but I feel more importantly, you need to make an educated vote. And if you don't vote, that's fine, but you need to have some say in your government. You need to do something to influence your government. And that is as simple as calling your state, your county commissioner, and going to a meeting and trying to get a hold of them. If you have an issue, you need to speak up for yourself. If we don't speak up for ourselves, things will continue the way they are. You know, in Florida, municipal elections, city elections happen at any time during the year. We have elections that happen on Saturday nights. People don't know about them. How do they get away with it? It's literally allowed in Florida law. They get away with it because people can do, you know, these cities can set these elections, and people don't say, why is this election happening now? They don't do anything about it. So the same people vote, and the same people vote the same people back into office. And then the system continues, and everybody says, well, it's the government's fault. It's like, no, it kind of starts with you if you're not doing everything in your power to make sure your government is working for you, because that's what government is supposed to do.
Straight up. I was talking to a journalist the other day about, there's a push by the Star Trek online community.
I read what you said. You were absolutely right.
Well, thank you. I mean, I think voting for the elections in America, as in England, but particularly in America, because you have an electoral college, which you might be able to tell us a bit about in a second. But voting for seems so intimidating and can feel like it's not worth your while because your vote simply won't count. Because Hillary Clinton, for example, got an enormous number of votes, didn't get in. Al Gore got an enormous amount of votes, didn't get in. You know, the list goes on.
Right.
What you can do is what you just said, and that is you can vote a local election because you know the price of milk in your village, on your street. You know what's happening to the farmers around the corner. You know what's happening to the workers in the mill. So you can, that's something you have your hands on. You cannot not notice that because you're local. You've lived there for years or months or whatever it is.
Exactly.
Vote there and you might catch a bug and eventually vote for a national election. I forgive people for the national because it's so intimidating. And you may even get thrown out of the country if you're an immigrant.
Right.
There's a lot of different dangerous things they're trying to catch people out of. And if you're not white, you may not even be allowed to vote if you haven't registered in the past, etc., etc., etc. What do you think needs fixing primarily in Florida?
Oh, where do we start?
Yeah, one of those, isn't it? Is what you just said, that, you know, the same people vote the same people in every year, every 6 years, 2 years, whatever it is, and the system self-perpetuates. You've got a situation where laws passed by the Supreme Court, for example, Citizens United, which gave a corporation the right to give money as an individual, basically said that corporations are individuals from a political perspective. Do you think that's what the root of the problem is? That we're spending, the people who can afford it are manipulating the elections, at least people's opinion and the elections, and the people who can't afford it, which is most of us, don't get a shout.
Yeah, that's it. That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
And that was the bottom line before Citizens United, but it has especially been the problem in the past 20 years. It didn't help, I should say, that we've had certain deregulation of certain systems in our country. The big one that comes to mind is telecommunications. Since Reagan, deregulation that's allowed, you know, under Reagan, so that we didn't have the fairness doctrine anymore, so that people didn't have to give it equal time to sides. And then we had deregulation of telecom in the 90s under Clinton and that Congress, that's led to companies like Clear Channel, who's bought up all these radio stations, or Sinclair. I mean, it's amazing how much, for all the complaining about the media, how many conservative media outlets are out there, and they're huge companies buying up all these local radio and TV stations and newspapers. And they probably have more say in what's happening, in what you know and what you hear about our country than anybody else. Okay, this is because it was based on something you had said earlier, and I just want to point this out with regard to the Electoral College. This is the right, no, this is, hold on, I found this. Washington Post did a story in 2017. They analyzed data from 33 states and the District of Columbia and found 754,000 people voted in 2016, but did not vote for president. And among the states with the biggest margins, Florida, there were 160,000, actually 161,000 undervotes or invalid votes. They wrote in Mickey Mouse or whatever.
Yeah.
The margin between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump was 112,911 votes. Hillary Clinton wins that, gets some of those undervotes. This is a different country. Michigan, same thing. Margin of error, margin between Clinton and Trump, 10,704 votes. Yeah. Undervote, 75,000.
It's a tiny number. It's a tiny number, but everyone counts. Yeah.
Everyone counts. And on top of that, we had 100 million people in this country who didn't vote, period, even though they could have. So if nothing else, you thinking your vote doesn't matter in a big race, like with an electoral college, it does. So many people decided not to vote because they're like, Clinton's going to win anyway.
Yeah.
They didn't think it was going to happen, and it happened.
It happened. Yeah.
If you feel strongly about who wins an election, even if you don't like the other person just a little bit, if you feel that strongly, don't assume that someone else is going to make the right vote for you.
Yeah.
That is the bottom line.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Get out and vote. Get out and vote. That's whatever country you're in. Yeah. And if you don't understand, then start small, small, like you said, with your council, with the local politicians.
Yes.
That'll be a start, because later it'll get bigger and you'll get wiser and you'll start figuring out whose news sources you trust.
Yep.
And hopefully triangulating them against other people, other stories you don't think you trust, other publications you don't think you trust, because you can verify your own news.
Mm-hmm.
I think you've hit the nail on the head, and thanks, Christy, for being wonderful. And I hope everybody turns up and looks at your stuff, because I'm sure you've written stuff that isn't about how to vote.
All right, we're going over to Kirsty Walker next.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, Kirsty.
All right.
How are you?
Not bad. Yourself?
It's the middle of the night in Scotland, or are you Scottish living somewhere else?
No, I'm kind of coming off night shifts at the moment, so everything's broken. Days have no meaning. What is time?
Oh, brother, what do you do? What do you do for not quite living?
I'm a quality control scientist for a company that at the moment is making point of care testing devices and strips for COVID-19. So I'm very tired.
So they work round the clock. If you're working night shift.
It's a 24/7 operation, 12-hour shifts.
My goodness. Are you in the UK?
Yeah, just outside of Stirling.
Got it.
So,
right.
Like Glasgow, up a bit to the right, Stirling, William Wallace country.
Yeah, I haven't been there. I've been to Glasgow. What's life like in say that the town again?
Well, the nearest major town is Stirling, but I'm in a smaller village further down the Ochil Hills called Tillicoultry. So
what a name!
Say that 10 times fast.
Great name.
Tillicoultry.
Great name. So yeah, how is it all around there? Because I know England's kicking off again, and I don't know about Scotland.
It is starting to go back up again, which is frustrating because we would like to slow down for a minute, but
yeah.
But it's starting to rise again. But it's kind of like a combination of like complacency and there are rules in place, like, you know, wear masks on public transports, but the people who work on public transport have no power to enforce it. So, you know, it's like a polite suggestion, but
yeah. But it was to be expected a bit, wasn't it? Because when we did need to go back to work, kids needed to get a bit more intermingled on some level. It needed to be. I just don't think we've quite imagined enough about how we did it. But we knew that there would be a bounce back. But I think this bounce back might be more than just a bounce back that is.
Yeah, I think they've gone sort of a bit too hard and a bit too fast on it. Yeah, I think, to be honest though, until like there's some sort of vaccine in place, or at least in our case, like the tests that we're rolling out, they only take 12 minutes instead of at the moment like a day to 2 days to get your results. So hopefully that will help slow the spread as well. If people know they're carrying the virus within half an hour showing up to be tested, then they can isolate straight away instead of waiting until they get the results through and then.
There's a word they've been using in America, and I'm pretty certain that Sturgeon is not using it in Scotland, and that is herd immunity. 2 words. But it's been mentioned again and again by the president, by a couple of his CDC kind of.
Herd immunity only works when there are vaccines.
Exactly. And there is the misconception that somehow if enough people get it, we will be immune. And although that is scientifically probably true, how many million people have to die for that to actually occur?
Exactly. It's like, yeah, okay, you can have your natural occurring herd immunity, but look at that, you just killed 5% of the population. Fantastic.
Yeah, well done.
This is the man who told people to inject bleach, so.
Yeah, I know. What are your mantras? What do you live by? It can be an idea, it can be a motto, it can be anything, but it doesn't have to be, you don't have to sound like, you know, Gandhi or anything. 2
seconds, hold on. Georgie! Buddy! So my hamster's losing his mind.
That's your hamster.
I've got a hamster. If you hear that noise, it's my hamster who is losing his mind on his wheel.
Oh, good for him. Good for it. Good for it. Is it he or she? Him.
He's a good boy. Oh, he's... Go on,
Do you ever bring him out?
He's not. I've only had him a week. He's not hand tamed yet, and
oh my goodness. Okay, he'd be freaked out.
He's still a baby, so.
Wow. What made you want to? How did you get a hamster? Sorry, I know we're talking at the same time, but that's the thing.
Well, me and my other half had been talking about it for a while. It's like, let's get a pet. That'll be cute, and we were supposed to do it like together during the summer, but then the pandemic happened and I'd been wanting to do it for ages and ages and ages, and because I live on my own right now, I kind of just impulse bought him from a pet shop across the road.
That's wonderful.
And I messaged him, I was like, you know that thing I do where I'm kind of impulsive but you sort of love me for it? Well, lol, you're a dad.
Lol, you're a dad.
Sorry, Dad. Anyway,
what's he called?
He's Georgie for short, but this is the thing with animals, is you can call them anything and they won't care.
True that.
One of the very first films we watched together was a movie called The Death of Stalin. I don't know if you've seen it.
Yes, I have. I thought it was terrific.
Yeah, well, here's the thing, we love that film. It's excellent. And
Absolutely.
So his full name is Field Marshal Georgy Zhukov.
Oh gosh, okay, yeah. Zhukov. Absolutely.
And every time I put his football out, he represents the entire Red Army at the buffet. Every time. So that's his full name. Is Field Marshal.
How big is he? No, he's still a baby. How
he's about
quite large.
Yeah, he's a Syrian though, so you might get a bit bigger. But you know, he's fine. He's fine. Yeah, you were asking about mantras 5 minutes ago and we ended up talking about my hamster.
I know. That's how we roll, because we don't want to get too depressed about the politics of it. Who would you recommend people watch on YouTube if they want to get a sense of Scottishness in terms of comedy?
Oh, do you know what? There's a few episodes of this on YouTube. There's a wonderful BBC comedy called Still Game.
Still Game?
Still Game, yeah. It's basically about two old pensioners and their old man shenanigans. It's quite funny. There's also another guy, his name's Brian Lemons, but he goes by the name Limmy, Limmy. He's hilarious.
Brilliant.
You can find a lot of his like clips on YouTube. He does a lot of Twitch streaming as well these days. But yeah, Limmy's show is pretty funny.
Oh, fantastic. Because I'll tell you what, because ever since, Billy Connolly back in the day, who was like trailblazed the Glaswegian,
Aye.
And it's always been Scottish comedy, I mean, every comedy in a way, but Scottish particularly viciously self-deprecates. It criticises Scottish people in Scotland, but he does it in such a funny way that you only find it adorable. But I recommend everybody watch. So the first one is Limmy is the comedian, but Still Game. Sorry,
I'll type it in the chat now. So
good. That's what we needed.
And Still Game, and do you know what? Kevin Bridges as well. He's a funny lad. He made a very interesting observation a couple of years ago. Glasgow was once voted the knife crime capital of Europe, but also the friendliest city, which meant that, we'll stab you, but we'll call you an ambulance at the same time.
That's really good. Listen, it's been lovely talking to you, and thank you for coming in from Scotland. And I know it's 2:00 in the morning or something horrific like that for you. Let's talk again. You're one of the people I want updates from. Smashing.
Right, I'll put myself back on the list then.
Thanks.
Right, bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Kirsty. Oh my gosh, my face hurts from laughing. Okay, Rob, you are up after that. Good luck.
Are you a big fan of The Clash?
I love The Clash. I do a radio show. So I've been playing records like on the radio since I was 17. And I know she talked a little bit about media, but where I work at, it's a community radio station. So it's not owned by a company, and we can play whatever the hell we want. Yeah. Absolutely. So it's great because I just kind of stumbled into The Clash when I was like 15. I went to see my grandfather. I went to see my grandfather in San Francisco, or in Hollister, which is outside of San Francisco, and he had a shortwave radio. And at night, I was like just listening to everything. At first, the first night, it was like, oh, I can hear fishing boats or whatever. And then I heard these stations up the coast, and they're playing like Madness, and The Clash, and the Pogues. But then there was a station that was playing like this amazing Moroccan music, and that's where I first heard Asha Bosley from India, right? Wow. So I just sort of jumped in. So like a lot of kids in America had the classic rock phase. I never had that. I went right from my brother's like gay disco records and soul, and my dad's jazz and swing into like punk and new wave. Wow. So my musical evolution has just been all over the place.
Did you like the American punk scene as well, or kind of
I like all of it. I mean, I love the Ramones, and I like Talking Heads, like the drummer from Talking Heads. Sure. I just interviewed him, and he has a book out, and it's great. He has a book out. Chris France has a book out, and there's all kinds of stuff in there about Blondie and the Velvet Underground. I know they're not punk, but like the Velvet Underground stuff, and just that creative time of like New York in the 70s. I'm a big fan. I love New York in the 70s. I think if I could go back to one time, originally I was going to say the 20s, but you know what? I'm living in the 20s now, so I don't need to. But I think 1970s New York would be fascinating, just between all the poets and the artists and the acting, and one of the things
kind of dirty, it was grimy,
and it was cheap, because when I lived there in the 90s, it was just starting to get cleaned up. It was, I mean, Times Square was still, So that was great about living in New York and the people watching, and I miss that kind of thing now. There's a whole new world being somebody that's an essential worker now, that whole like people watching now is taking on a whole new like freak show effect thing.
Absolutely.
And it's scary. But yeah.
But I cannot reiterate enough how important being a DJ is. And in a weird way, I'm a kind of DJ. Not playing records, but kind of people who are playing together. And I think we should be doing a bit less of the just chat, a bit more of the absolutely face to face. I can't hide behind just a moniker. You will always know who I am. Kind of Zooms. I think Zoom has got a similar kind of thing.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I have some friends that I do board game meetups with one night a week. It's great. I love how one of them will hear thunder and the other side of like South St. Louis, they'll hear thunder, and then 10 minutes later, oh, there it is, you know. And I've got some friends that I know from conventions that we talk every Sunday night or Sunday afternoon. Right. And then this, you know, and this is great because I know absolutely no one. So it like reminds me that we live in this world and it's important, and, you know, everything is so tangent and instant that just taking the moment to listen to another person's conversation you have absolutely nothing to do with, right? Is like, it really helps you. I think what you're doing, and I don't know if you realize you're doing this, but you are conditioning people to listen that may not necessarily always listen. Now, this group's probably smarter than the average bear, but it trains people to listen more, listen to ideas that they don't necessarily get exposed to, but it also has this amazing sense of community that, you know, in science fiction right now has been really hard to find. You know?
No, it's true. And we're a loving group here. We're pretty sweet.
I mean, this is the first time I've heard politics and voting and his name all mentioned in the same sentence in like 6 months, where somebody wasn't like screaming or throwing shoes, you know?
Yes, exactly.
Like I literally don't talk to anybody in my family because they're all insane.
Right?
I mean, it's just like, okay, I'm done. You know, I don't need to hear this, you know? And it's to the point where like, I can have, I can go apoplectic with all of this, you know, or just walk away. And it's just, you know, there's so much more things in life to discover. If you just, I mean, you have to be vigilant. You have to vote, you know.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that negativity
I'm doing, you know, what I decided I was going to do when all this started was get involved with helping people do citizenship. So like, it started weird because I do social media for a friend of mine's Indian restaurant. And a lot of the people there would work 6 months, go to India, come back for 6, and then come back, right?
Right.
And they wanted to get citizenship and green cards and things, and it was such a nightmare. So I started talking to them about how to do it, and then I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna help them study for citizenship tests, and it's been amazing because I love to hear about people from other places. Now, St. Louis is weird because we have the largest Bosnian population outside of Bosnia. And we have a lot of Eritreans and Ethiopians and a lot of like a lot of Africans coming over, and it's very strong in Latin America. But now we got a lot from the Sudan and a lot from Somalia, right?
Right.
So it's just been fascinating.
Yeah.
To like hear these people's stories, you know. I met a woman from Iran that escaped from the Shah by riding in the bottom of a milk truck, like underneath it, right? And I'm like, okay, you tell me that democracy is not worth fighting for. You know?
Oh my goodness.
You know? Yeah. And the fact that like, you know, you're leaving Iran and nobody thinks to look at the underneath them. I'm like, oh my God, I couldn't even think about that, you know? So a lot of that, so a lot of the things I like are like escapism from, you know, like I love to play records that, circling back, that make me get away from that, or I like to watch movies that make me get away from that. But at the same time, I'm just to the point now where like, you know, how do you separate your activism from your daily life? Where before, activism was a hobby, or it was like volunteerism was something you did because you liked it. Now it's like, it's life or death, and that just scares the shit out of me. Pardon my French. You know. So and that's part of the reason why I asked you your question, Because I'm just wondering whether, you know, I don't think an actor from another part of the world should have to come to America and change their name. But I also, at the same time, know that it's a lot easier to say Alexander Siddig than it is to you know, and then you don't have to deal with Americans that can't even pronounce it, and then that whole thing.
I mean, as I say, it wasn't a political act. I mean, everything is a political act, but it wasn't sort of an act of, you know, a moral cowardice. It was just a convenience. I feel now, in retrospect, there's an element of moral cowardice, but I didn't obviously know that at the time, and I should have stuck to my guns and held on to my name. But I had no idea what was at stake, because the world hadn't turned on Arab people at that point. It did that, you know, since the last 20 years. So it's just one of those things. And I'm not
and you know, with COVID, it's like it's extra important to sort of take stock in all these things. Like, I live in a state where our governor wasn't elected, right? The original governor abdicated, so we have the guy who took over, and he completely just doesn't think any of this is real or happening. And it's very odd, because he you know, he's been denying it for months, and now him and his wife both have tested positive, right? But they're still having at the governor's mansion, they're still having their fall festival during the end of the time they're supposed to be quarantining. You know, it's just like,
what are you going to do, huh? I mean, that's the problem with the US right now, is the fact that there are, you know, 17 states where the number is still rising in infections every day instead of going down. 4% of the world's population, 20% of all the infections. What the hell is wrong with that picture?
I know.
Listen, I've got time for 2 more people.
And this is why this is so great, because everybody's really awesome. And
come on back. Come on.
I come every week and listen, because it's just fun just to hear all the stories of
that's great.
Everybody doing kick-ass things.
Let us know how to get in touch with listen to your station. I know it's a community station, but this is a community.
Yeah, I put the email up, the website. I just put it in the chat.
Perfect.
And if Mel wants it, Mel can email me or whatever. It's no big deal, you know.
Thank you.
It's all records that my mom referred to as Fright Rock when I was a kid. So just whatever, you know.
Thanks, Rob.
But everybody just keep doing what you're doing, because it's all great.
Thanks, brother. You can pretty much guarantee it.
Yeah.
We're going to go over to Kira.
Hi.
Kira.
Yep, that's my actual name. So
it's a pretty good name.
Thank you. I think so. Myself. Does it have connection? Yes, it does.
Oh. Do you think there's a direct linear line between Nerisse and you in terms of the name, or is Kira from another area?
No, well, it's a running joke in my family that I am named after Major Kira, because Kira is actually my nickname. It's not my full name.
Oh, okay.
My dad always gives me this, like, you know, dad style maybe kind of thing. He's like, I can either confirm nor deny, because he's a huge Trekkie. He's like the Trekkie head of the family.
So sharks.
Yeah, sharks.
Where do you start? How did you get excited about sharks? What led you? Are you a zoologist, a marine biologist? What is your thing?
I studied marine biology, and I have a minor in animal behavior. So my junior year of high school, when I was applying to colleges, my parents absolutely refused to let me go in undecided, so I had to have something. So I started taking a bunch of electives. I took astronomy, I took oceanography, I took a whole bunch of other, you know, graphic design, things like that. And our oceanography class ended up going to the New Jersey State Aquarium on a field trip. And I think that's the first aquarium I can, like, consciously remember going to.
Yeah.
And it was just like changed my life. I was just
My
like,
God.
this is what I want to do.
So
Yeah,
how do you care for a shark in captivity? Because they are famous for not being friendly to captivity. They get ill very easily, don't they? If they're not in the ocean.
One, I'm going to correct you. We don't call it captivity. We call it human care.
Thank
it's
you.
a lot less of a negative connotation.
Yeah.
That's fine. Don't worry. And I think you're thinking more species specific, like a pelagic shark, like a white shark or a tiger shark. Yeah, those animals don't do very well in human care, but
yeah,
a lot of sharks actually do very well in human care. New York Aquarium boasted the oldest living sand tiger shark in Aquaria. She ended up being 43 years old. And, you know, sharks are they're long lived, but they're subject to a lot of
negative.
I guess, negative too, but like bycatch and, you know, fishing and overfishing and all those things, and the mass culls that go on. So they're subject to, you know, a lot of negative things that happen in the ecosystem. So
yes,
they don't reproduce very often. So the amount of sharks that are getting taken versus how often they reproduce is, you know, very unbalanced. So
I would love to go to this aquarium. I would love to see.
You totally should. I can get you in.
Thank you.
I can get you in. I work there.
There's a zoo in Washington,
so,
in Boston. I also would love to go to. Unfortunately, COVID, my wife and I just won't go out and do that kind of thing. We will.
No, I don't blame you. I don't blame you, but when it's sanctioned, go outside. You can come down.
I would love to.
I'll give you a behind-the-scenes tour. You got it.
What, in a nutshell, what's your day like? I mean, because I'd like you, if you have time, because I know your job is demanding, but can you come back with a sort of more of a guide to your work? Like,
of course,
show us iPhone footage or something that you took that you feel comfortable sharing.
Yeah, no, I'd love to. Yeah.
Because we'd love to have
a
look at your day. You know, I think that would be just.
Yeah, I can send everything over to Mel, no problem. Yeah.
And you
but
and just
basically, but basically if I were to describe my job poorly, I am like a shark babysitter. So replace a child with a shark, and that's basically what I do. We do things from testing water quality to building the life support systems like the filtration, to tailoring nutrition to individuals or, you know, certain species, to training. We actually train our animals. So, you know, and we scuba dive all of our tanks. So, you know, those exhibits are their homes, and I am their maintenance keeper. And I want to make sure that they are living the best life that they can absolutely live.
Oh, and I'm sure they are. I'm sure they are. And the passion in your voice, I totally believe that they're the most comfortable, pampered sharks in the world. But I love it because there's a big drive right now, and understandably, to destigmatize sharks. Because they are one of the most misunderstood, like wasps, you know, because they account for fatalities in various oceans around the world. And I think this is what you're doing is helping with that. And I think one of the values of zoos, by the way, and aquaria is to get people to relate to the animals they see and to really have a memory of and start to sympathize, care for, and start funding and sending money to organizations that look after these animals in any sense of the word. But I think
honestly, it's one of my favorite parts of my job is actually, I mean, I don't interact with the public a lot because I'm behind the scenes, but occasionally when I do get to interact with them, that's one of my favorite parts is actually just educating and spreading awareness, like especially in like a setting like this where it's very casual, you know, I'm not in uniform, anything like that, but they are ambassadors to their counterparts in the wild. And especially for people who might live in a landlocked part of the country or from another country, like this is something they'll probably never see at home. So we want to give our guests like the best experience they have, while also, you know, putting out this message that sharks are super important to our oceans and to our ocean ecosystems. And especially now, I just saw something in the news that while they're trying to come up with a COVID vaccine, there is actually a compound that's found in the oil of shark liver called squalene that is apparently an important part of creating the vaccine. And so scientists are hypothesizing that if we start going after sharks for this oil to make the COVID vaccine, we're going to lose, you know, more than half of the population that's already decrepit. You know, just from years of, you know, population
well, let's hope that they come up with
decreases. And
let's hope they come up with something synthetic or some other way.
Well, there are shark-free alternatives, and so there's a big push for, you know, there's a petition going around, you know, one or two that's like, use the shark-free alternatives. We need our sharks. Sharks are important. I know they look scary, but they are our friends. I promise you.
Yeah, I've seen the sites. I've seen those fishing nets in off the Philippines, and I've seen, you know, those people fishing for the Far Eastern markets, who are causing all kinds of problems in the shark world. We love what you do. We want to hear more. Come back, please, Kira.
Yeah, no, for sure. I will. I will.
Thank you, Kira. Coolest job. I don't like fish of any kind, but that's a freaking cool job. Yeah. Okay, and now poor Patrick. Patrick Q has to follow up. Good luck, Patrick.
Everybody steps up.
All good, all good. As many people have said, we have a great crew on here. It is an honor to follow any of the fellow Sidsters. Hello again.
Hi, good to see you again. How are you?
Doing well, actually. About to celebrate my older son's birthday tomorrow. He turns 11.
Oh, my goodness, fantastic. That's really cool. Who was it Michael who's 12? They're all the same age as I know Jacob is eight or not. I'm losing count because we've had the birthdays here. But how is your boy?
Very well, both of them. They finally started online school. It's going somewhat well, but yeah, no, everything is okay.
Right, good. Really glad to hear it. And I can't remember where you were.
So I'm in actually, if you can see sort of over you can see the tower, the CN Tower in Toronto. Yes.
You are in Toronto, and we talked a bit about that. That's absolutely right. I do remember.
We did. I think it was August 11th, and we actually got into a really good chat about climate change and unity in times of division and strife and all these sort of great things.
And we're still in the same place. We're still discussing the same stuff. The theme I think we've arrived at a theme for today, and that is what are your self-made tenets by which you like to live your life, and what do you tell yourself when you need to tell yourself something? Because occasionally you have to give yourself some advice. And what will you do?
Well, I'm actually a bit of a Churchill fan, so it's sort of a mix of sort of, you know, some of his more famous lines and sort of the KBO, the keep buggering on sort of thing.
Yes. Keep buggering on is great ones.
It is, and I mean, if we're going to actual tenets, I've got many. I've got books of sayings and writings, but sort of I think it's encompassed a bit in the toast that I always give when I'm out with friends or colleagues. And I always a bit of a Shakespearean Star Trek mix here, but it's sort of to the undiscovered country and winning out against all odds, meaning to the great unknown, and let's all achieve the best we can going forward. Never settle.
And if I remember correctly, please correct me if I'm wrong, I know you will. You work for the Foreign Office, you're an ambassadorial State Department. Something there's something along those lines. You that was your thing, yeah.
I had. I'm still with the federal government, but in a very different capacity. I had worked in that capacity. Yes.
We touched on that last time you came.
Yes.
Great.
Very much so.
How do Canadians feel about the COVID, the situation? Is it post-COVID yet, or are we still very much in the grip of it?
We were almost post-COVID. It started rebounding, and it's unfortunately, like you've seen in parts of Europe, and even unfortunately parts of Australia and other places, it is rebounding quite heavily, and we're needing to restrict in certain places.
Right. I think that's inevitable, though. I've already touched on that tonight, because the minute you do try and get back to work, and my goodness, we have to at some point. I mean, it doesn't matter when. How, it does matter how, but you've got to bite the bullet. You've got to get back in the saddle and wheel out all the aphorisms you care to mention. But what we've got to do, and when you do that, of course, you're going to expose a few more people, or a lot more in the case of some countries, to the virus. Do you think that Canada is the poster child? Do you think they've got it right?
I'd say we're middle of the pack. I'd say if there was a poster child, it's probably Taiwan, Korea, or New Zealand. But, it's interesting that you touch upon the inevitability of this, and, listening to so many of the other folks on the social club, it's really actually inspired me. Like I've never stopped working. In fact, I've probably been busier over the last 6 months than I have been in some time with actual work. But it's really given me a bit of an inspiration with all of the challenges to sort of start jotting down some of the experiences and stories I've had for my kids, for posterity, in case, anything goes sideways. So it's been a bit of an inspiration to do what's right.
Really good idea.
Yeah.
I mean, and kids really love that too. I mean, I can vouch for that. My son, barely a day goes by when he's not trying to mine some information about my personality he didn't know. Mainly because he spent the first, however many years it is, being a parent. And the relationship is so not real. It is real, but it's not like a friend. It's devoid of some certain aspects of your personality. And I know now that my mom, whom I adored, I worshipped the ground she walked on. I still don't know who she was. I still don't know what kind of lover she was, whether she had that, what her love life was, not what kind of lover. That sounds a bit weird. But I didn't know anything about that side of her, which was such an important part of all of us. If it's whether it's love or just those personal things, it doesn't have to be love necessarily. But I just don't know. And if you could give your kids a clue to that one day they can bump into, find, read, that would be a real gift.
That is the plan. And it's sort of a confluence of two things. One is when I asked my mother about these things, about my grandfather. So I know some of the facts, but I was about 20 when he passed away. And I asked, what was his personality like beyond being the grandfather? And I don't know, he never shared those things. And I'm like, well, okay. And then listening to the stories of people in here and some of the some of the artwork and some of the great things that have come out of the social club, I'm like, you know what? It's time. I'm going to put this down. I'm going to make sure that my stories, my experiences are preserved. And I think I've got some good ones too. So, I don't want that lost. I want the kids to know who I am.
Yeah, for sure. Because you really do have to play a different role now. And that's a role that is assigned to you. And then you can't always be like, hey, well done. Great, near miss on the road, but you made it. You can't do those things. You're such a good driver. But I think that's a really smart idea. There's a saying that, at least in certain parts of Africa, where they say, I see you.
Yes.
As a greeting.
And it's quite a beautiful saying because it encompasses a lot of very important things. It connotes understanding. It says, I will speak to you on this level with you. And those things are very, I think we should all be saying, I see you all the time. Because we say, I hear you often enough. And I think that your kids deserve to see you. It's very hard because it's embarrassing. You know, my son asks me things that I find just plain awkward. He would, you know, he asked me about whether or not I like someone, or how in love am I? You know, things that I just go, well, but I haven't really given it much thought. And things that British people squirm when they hear, you know. I particularly am particularly British, so I'm very easily embarrassed and very sensitive about offending. So I will squirm a lot about personal stuff, but I'm gonna do the same as you. I'm gonna start writing stuff down. Although actually, if he wants to watch 400 hours of these chats, he'll get to know me quite well.
I suspect that's right. I'm trying to seed a bit of it, you know, age appropriate, 9 and 11, almost 10 and 11. So starting to do it verbally, but you know, you never know. Just in case, writing it down. I also really love that expression. I've heard that when I did some work in certain countries in Africa, and I always thought that was a really great way of putting it because, you know, I think if more people saw each other, there'd be a lot less strife.
I know. I agree. I mean, I think that's what the world needs to do. And I don't know why we can do it in this club and why not, and we're all strangers. And why we're not anymore, but we were. And why we can't do it anywhere else so easily in a big wide world. And I suspect that's because there's a malevolent presence dealing with our introductions and making false introductions and not playing fairly. And, you know, that's what I'm assuming. I don't know that. But I think that we're just being introduced to each other wrong.
I think that's right. I think if you took about 5 or 6, you know, small groups, like 5, 6 people from disparate communities, disparate political philosophies, and forced them to go on a canoe trip or an overland hiking trip in Iceland or travel to the most remote place you can imagine and force them to work together, in the end, they'd come out a lot closer together. They wouldn't tear each other apart.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We've got to explore that. I think we're going to explore that in the next few weeks. What is it that drives us apart? How do we end up so far apart? And why do we end up disliking each other without even seeing each other?